President Cyril Ramaphosa is warning of the rise of racism around the world, and that's during his ongoing tour of Europe. The president delivered a speech to the European Parliament in Strasbourg before heading to Brussels for a summit with EU leaders. And of course, as always, whenever our president travels the world, asked about land. And today is the day that Parliament decided for changing the constitution to allow for land expropriation without compensation. We're joined by SABC foreign correspondent Jack Parrock from Brussels. Jack, did land come up today?
It did indeed, Francis. As you can imagine, this is not only a story that exists in South Africa, but has found its way over to Europe as well. That it has hit headlines here in Europe as well. It's something that's taken great interest. In fact, European members of Parliament have actually sent a mission to South Africa to look at what's going on in the past. Cyril Ramaphosa, though, the president, defended it and said that this is a constitutional move in the right direction. He was keen in his press conference today to insist that international investors should not be worried about bringing their money into South Africa, and that it wouldn't be, as he said, a whole-scale expropriation of land, even if this law does make it, this amendment does make it through.
Now, big things happening there regarding Brexit, and I believe he's been commenting on that.
Certainly a huge day for Brexit here in Europe. Last night, the European Union and the UK agreed a deal on how the UK should exit the European Union. But essentially, there's a complicated trade, sort of what's being called a backstop, which is essentially a safety net for the UK as it leaves, which would basically put it in a separate customs union. But there's some issues surrounding Northern Ireland, a trading relationship that's very, very complicated, that has not gone down very well with those in favour of Brexit in the United Kingdom. And there's been a series of resignations of ministers in the British government. And here in Europe, it's been watched very, very closely. Now, Cyril Ramaphosa said that the EU leaders, who he's been discussing with here, had comforted him and made him feel that it would be okay. And he said that South Africa was making sure that it wouldn't impact the South African economy too negatively. Countries around the world, like South Africa, but obviously all the other countries that are going to see second-hand effects of Brexit, are keeping a keen eye on what's going on here. And Cyril Ramaphosa, the president, was right here in the thick of it on the day it happened.
I mean, there's so many ructions in Britain right now, and this is huge for the EU. They're concerned about anyone else getting smart ideas and following the UK. What does that mean for South Africa? Are we being somewhat undermined in our efforts to sort of court EU leaders right now if they are obsessed with this matter?
Certainly not, actually. I think it was quite surprising, and I think the President Cyril Ramaphosa was welcomed very warmly, in fact, by the Presidents of the European Council, Donald Tusk, and the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. They said good friends, and they acted in their press conference very warmly towards one another. And that's part of what the European Union is desperate to try and do, to say, listen, the United Kingdom's leaving, but we're still a huge trading bloc of 27 countries, 2 of them in the G7 or more, with the UK leaving, obviously. There's a lot of pressure on the European Union to try and show that it's still an international player. Obviously, as a trading bloc it is, and the South African president clearly felt okay with what they were saying.
All right, thank you very much. SABC foreign correspondent Jack Parrock from Brussels giving us an update on President Cyril Ramaphosa's 2-day working visit to the European Union. He's been in Strasbourg and Brussels.